How are you today?
I'm all right. It's real life. Just as I was about to come on and do it, my son, who has a broken arm, just trapped his finger in a deck chair. So all the dramas.
Oh my God, that's terrible. Milo, sit still.
I know. But yeah, free. Okay. All right.
Out of the house. I'm sitting in the garden today because Shannon's taken over the top floor of the house with reorganization, so I had to get out of the studio.
It's I tell you what, it's all real life, isn't it? It's like
Really, really, especially in your life at the moment. So it's a really real life. It's not a joke.
It's been quite a week. It really has. It's I keep saying that this isolation tests. It tests us, and these challenging times bring out innovation and creativity. But I tell you what, I'm going to be really bloody creative if my words are true. And say hello. Should we come say hello?
Riders.
They were out there.
I know.
Just dyed Frida's hair purple as well.
I was waiting for the reveal picture, but we're going to have to wait.
You'll have to wait for that now, I think. But yeah, geez, it's good. These lives have been good because one, it's a reason to have to look presentable.
Hello, darling. Hello.
And actually, I had such a difficult day yesterday after getting out of hospital with Milo and family and being knackered, and then I had to go on live at 4:00 with PMAC, with our fitness guy. I'm like, I don't actually think I could do it. And do you know what? It was really, strangely, these lives have actually been quite therapeutic because I was feeling absolutely crappy, and everyone was in tears just before I went on. And it was like,
hi.
And then had the hour with him and had a really good chat and actually felt great afterwards. So it was they're good. It's like it's a good little interlude each day, actually having the chats, whether it's the content of the conversation or just a little break in the day from the insanity of indoors.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, shall we begin? A lovely introduction from you, Zoe, as who you are and what you do.
Well, I started off after studying arts and fashion about 300 years ago. I was a stylist for a long time, so I used to travel around. I was very lucky because things were very different. I started pre-digital, so actually as a creative even, it's been a really interesting transition within my creative career because there's been so much that's changed. And I think actually you kind of either jumped on board or you didn't. And actually I saw that even with photographers at the early stage. So I was a stylist for many, many years. Editorial celebrities. Actually, I dug out, I think I posted today some pictures from the Robbie Williams video I did. I don't even know how long ago it was. It must have been, it was over 50, it was maybe 15 years ago, 18 years ago, I'm not sure. I did a massive video for it, but I used to do a lot of celebrities, a lot of editorial. And then just over 12 years ago, I set up a shop. So I created a concept store where we sold a mixture of, I say we, it was me, but it was 2,500. It was me. It felt like it should have been an army, and I did have a lot of staff, but it was me that was doing it. And it was a mixture of designer, vintage, and actually emerging designers. So I used to do a lot of mentoring and support with, and actually artists as well. We used to have an art gallery. And then I had my own bridal collection. I used to do a lot of events. And then all the way through, I've been doing a lot of mentoring and support with small and large brands. So then 3 years ago, set up Slingshot with Sam, who's my business partner. And to be honest, when we set that up, it was a little bit, we've both been doing it a long time. She has a semi-similar background. She was a stylist, and then she's also a yoga teacher and had a yoga clothing brand. But when we started Slingshot, we kind of came together realizing we were doing a similar thing, and we were both like, we just want to cut the crap. It was going to be called No Bullshit, but that felt a bit wrong. So when we set up Slingshot, we went through a massive branding process of ourselves. Obviously, Slingshot is a strategy, innovation, and communication agency, but we're a creative agency. but for us, it's about it's branding, marketing, PR, our tools, but it's really about strategic disruption. Fuck it up with a plan. So our whole thing is thinking outside the box, supporting creatives, creating collaborations with. We have artists and creatives that we represent, that we create collaborations with bigger brands. We have some brands and creatives that we do PR or market or branding for, and then we do a lot of project stuff too and events. So it's a bit of a mixture, but it's kind of, for me, brought together, I guess, everything that I do after being a stylist and being really I just dropped you. You just flew through the air. Oh my god, sorry about that. It's
very exciting time.
It's a new tripod. Again, real life. I think I slightly lost my train of thought there.
So I'm like, where were we on the floor? You were talking about Slingshot and how you two came together.
Yeah, it was like, but I think for us, there's a lot of stuff out there, there's a lot of services out there, and in some ways, but actually as a creative or a creative brand, then on the other side, there's kind of not. And I think for us, there's a lot of agencies that think very literally, and for us, it's much more thinking laterally, and also finding solutions to objectives rather than, like with PR, you know, a lot of people go to an agency and say, I want to be in Vogue, I want to be in blah-de-blah, I want to be in Art Review or whatever, rather than, and actually the questions we ask is, what are your objectives? What's the big idea? What's the big thing you want? Like hire, and then actually whatever we do within your sort of path has to be about getting there. You know, it has to be about reaching that bit rather than thinking too much about the smaller detail. And I think I think for us in general, just in the way that we teach or work with anyone, whether it's on we do a lot of mentoring, so we do a lot of, actually it's quite helpful now because we do a lot of Skype mentoring, but actually it is guiding people through a process, and it's a lot about changing mindset, because I think you know, I think a lot of this time as well, with all the changes, it's not just about changing behaviour, it's about changing mindset. And I think that's what we do a lot of. Sorry about this, everyone.
Real life.
It's like the Jeremy Beadle's going to jump out, and I've got some of the kids' blue tack I can stick in. Yeah, I think it's all about mindset. Whether we work on branding for people, whether we work on PR, whether we're doing mentoring, everything is about approach. And I think whether you're an artist, whether you're a photographer, photographer, artist, whether you've got a small brand, whatever you do, I think it's not just about your actions, it's about your mindset to the actions. And I think you know, that can make quite a big difference to how you approach things. You know, I think for us, it's with Slingshot, and I think probably for me in general, it's very much about a 360 approach. I think for me, the benefit of what I've more recently, in the last few years, found out that I have a portfolio career, or certainly have had until Slingshot, because I've done a lot of presenting and all different things along the way, is that it's kind of brought all that together, and actually having had quite an eclectic, in many ways, career, actually all of those bits have kind of now come together to make sense in a way.
Yeah.
To give me a very 360 approach in how I think on business and personal, you know, being able to see things from different angles rather than one way.
Yeah, because to be fair, obviously during this horrible time, all the stuff that you guys post is often either you're going online with the people that you guys work with to bring them to more people, or, you know, you're always like, good morning, and your little jogs in the morning and your pep talks for everyone. Like, people take the piss, but that's, like, it's so important, like you say, these lives. Like, I look forward to this all day, or if I have it in the morning, I feel a little bit more purpose and a bit of, you know, earrings in, and act like, you know, you have some clothes other than your pajamas and yoga clothes.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see how you guys are always, and every time I chat with you, always trying to adapt to support the people around you, I think is so nice to hear from a PR agency where it's not like, how do we make as much money as possible? Like, you're really trying to make sure that everyone that you work with has some kind of outlet, that they have you guys as a support structure. So that's been really nice to watch, just even through your social medias in the morning for me, and to see how you guys are taking care of your clients now when everyone is kind of freaking out and doesn't know what to do. So yeah, it's been really nice to have that sort of all the time from you guys, because it's consistent. And I think, like, you talk quite a lot in your lives about being authentic and the values that you have, and I think that's what's nice, is that it feels like no bullshit, like you say. Which is really refreshing, because everyone is full of bullshit.
There's a lot of bullshit, and I think, you know, obviously neither of us are whippersnappers. We've been around a little while, and we've certainly seen the different approaches that people have to work in general, whether it's PR, you know, because we do a mixture of kind of roles and services within what we do, and actually, ironically, the funny thing with this time at the moment is that actually, and I've talked quite a bit about it in the lives that we've done so far, is that actually, as a creative or a small business or small brand, you actually, certainly in this early period, you almost have a bit of an advantage over the bigger brands if you can be creative and innovative and outside the box about how you approach things, because there's so many layers, and I'm seeing this then through other people that I know that are working, and even husbands and stuff, that there's so many layers of politics and management and strategy that have to be put in place within the bigger businesses. That it's harder for them to be agile and react. And for us as a business, and how we support and educate the people that we work with on any level, is about being agile. And actually, this has just brought that so into the forefront of importance. And adaptability and agility is so important at the moment. But to be honest with you, it always is. And I think that's how, you know, I've always approached things. I don't know if that comes from I've never been employed. I think, and I was once. I was once. I certainly was before I did my when I was at university. I had a job in the bar, and I had a job at the fashion cafe, and I had jobs that were part-time jobs there. But beyond that, as soon as I graduated, I had a job at the fashion council for a few months, and that was a job. But after that, everything else was as freelancer, or I was never on payroll. I was at a fashion magazine. I was at a teenage magazine, was my first job, and so I've always been freelance. And you just, like, every day was different, and especially as a stylist, like it wasn't even like you got a job for a week, like you sometimes do as a graphic designer. You're never in an agency and you're like, right, you're there for a bit. Every day was different. Yeah. Sometimes I would have, towards the end, before I started to shop, I would sometimes have 3 or 4 jobs on a day, and I would have assistants on different jobs. I would prep it all, and I would have assistants on jobs. I remember once there's some really, I've got a lot of stories, and it depends how much you want out of it in this hour, but there are a lot of stories. And I remember once I used to work with Trini and Susanna. I don't know if people know that they were Trini's now still around, but they were the kind of fashion pair.
I used to have a TV when I first got here.
They had programs, they had books, they had I used to do the styling for everything they did. I did. And I remember at one point I was on a shoot with a photographer I worked with in the Maldives. So I was styling, I had a bikini on, styling. And there was no reception, so I got to the corner of this island like this, whilst art directing and styling this shoot. I had one assistant on an advertising campaign with Trini and Susanna for Nescafe. I had another assistant on an editorial shoot for something or other, and I was managing it all whilst on the phone in a bikini in this bonkers island in the Maldives, where I got a butler, which was mental. I had a butler, and it was the most surreal kind of, and it was like that often, and I would just, it was mentally busy. But so I think for me, I'm always adaptable. I've always been quite adaptable and I think freelancers, though at the moment, and creatives, it's harder because of the way impact it's had on careers at this time.
Yeah.
In some ways, that spirit of adaptability to a degree is there. It's inbuilt. It's about how you plug into it, how you channel it through this time.
Yeah, and obviously you've talked about being quite agile from before and setting up your shop in a recession, which is a bit crazy. But while pregnant, exactly. Have there been like moments that you can recall where actually your mindset sucked and was letting you down, and like it was kind of a negative time? And how did you, if you've had one, or a few, how did you kind of help yourself to get through that kind of being on your own, like you say?
Fabulous interior designer that we work with in Barcelona. How are you doing? Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest with you, the funny thing is, even with Slingshot, because I've always either been freelance or I've been like it's been my business, the various businesses I've set up over the years, it's just been me. So I've kind of created the rules. Apart from, on freelance jobs as a stylist or art director or whatever, it's short-lived bosses, it's just for a little period. But with Slingshot, I set it up with Sam. So we're business partners, and I knew I needed one after doing the shop. It was one of my takeaways, because there is another story at some point. I don't know. You never know with this isolation. That all might come out at some point. I don't think this is the time. But after finishing the shop and then the bits I did after that, I knew that in setting up something else properly, that I needed a business partner. And not because I needed it to be able to set a business up, but I think that in the interests and of being very honest with myself, I could see my strengths, and I'm now even more clear of what my strengths are within my career and my person. But it became very clear my flaws. I don't even know what I call them flaws, but the areas that I needed strengthening. Yeah. And they weren't necessarily ways that I could strengthen. So in in joining forces and taking a business partner for Slingshot, it's been amazing. I don't know if Sam's on or not, but it's been amazing. And I think we've both been very strong women, both strong working mums. And it's been amazing on many, many levels. But it's also been a challenge for both of us, because that whole idea that there's two bosses, two strong fucking women, like two strong mums, that have been around for a while. We've both been freelance for like 25 years. We're not whippersnappers. Obviously, I'm only 28, so I started young. But I think that a part of the challenges and where some of my flaws have probably been, I felt, have had a light shone on them a bit more, and I'd say she may say that too, but in a good way, has been in the last 3 years, because I think we're very opposite.
Yeah, you are. When I met
I'm swirly lines and she's straight lines.
You complement each other quite well. Like, I met her the first time I'd met you before, and I was a little bit more nervous around Sam, just only because she's quite quiet compared to you, very quiet compared to you. But the way when you, like, when I see you and you're having a small chat, like, it's really, like, it's a nice energy. You both, like you say, she has your point work are a little stronger, and then your parts are, so it's a really nice, it's been really strong women, like you say, to be able to work in this environment and be positive and have each other's back and really promote girl boss power. It's really, really encouraging to see.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think for both of us, as I say, I'm very wavy lines, she's very straight lines. And I think I have pushed her out of her comfort zone and she reins me in. Because I'm very conceptual in my thinking. I'm a bit visionaire in my mindset, and so at times like this, I get a little bit excited, a little bit overexcited about thinking outside the box and possibilities. I see opportunities everywhere, and in the past, that has sometimes been a problem, because you can't do everything yourself. I've tried to do everything myself, and I think that realization that actually, and the brilliant thing with setting up Slingshot was I can come up with ideas. I don't need to do them all myself. I can hand them over to clients or people we're mentoring or people doing stuff. You can hand them over and see them flourish and not have to physically do them yourself.
Yeah.
And it's great. So I think that the last 3 years have been challenging, but in a very strengthening way. Yeah. You know, I think we go through phases as creatives. And actually, this is why this period's really interesting, because actually, I mean, like I said, I set up the shop I had in a recession, underfunded. I mean, I had investors, but it was 2,500 square foot. It was bonkers, and it was massive, and the stock alone was insane. But it was, you had to be creative about it. Like the way that we curated the store, you know, the interior design of it, that it all had to be very creative, and it had to be very conceptually sort of visionaire driven, because when you don't necessarily have the finances or there's other restrictions, it pushes you. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the good creativity doesn't come out of a position of comfort. It comes out of a position of challenge. And so that's why I think, you know, with what you're doing with the collective is amazing. And, you know, like with the stuff that we're doing, I think when you're that minded, it really opens opportunities. And it's not even just that financial, but to really excel and express that side of innovation and creativity in a way that just doesn't happen. You know, and for those artists and creatives that are at home that maybe don't, you know, whether they're earning money or not, I think having that time and breath around stuff and being able to create from a position of challenge. You know, it's like most songwriters, the good stuff only comes when they're in pain. You know, you don't get, you know, when they're like doing well, then heartbreak. You know, it comes out of that place.
If I said to Gordon, we had on a few days ago, what's so toxic for us as artists is that mindset that only when there's pain can there be creativity. So yes, in your point, absolutely, Adele smashes records when she's heartbroken. The whole world is ready to relate to that pain. But I was thinking it's so important, because when you get that low, horrible inner monologue that you often have as a creative, like you cannot hope to be in heartache or hope to be super depressed in order to create stuff. But I think that's such a nice time, because, well, depending on your home situation, but if you're able to be near a studio in your home with your things, these are times when most of the artists I know are really about their production. And then for me, it's like, how do they then move that from there? Because there is a level of building your personality and getting people out there to know you in the art world and stuff like that. But how would you kind of give them advice now if they're sitting at home and sort of maybe wanting to start their online stuff? Or would you have any sort of advice for them to...
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, I think that as artists particularly, but creatives in general, yes, I think, you know, as you say, you become accustomed to the good stuff coming out of, and even writers, I mean, especially writers as well, that you become accustomed to waiting for hardship to push through that barrier to create. And it's one thing, and again, it is the same with fashion. You know, you can create an amazing collection, but then what the fuck do you do with it then? You know, if you want to convert it into money or into a career, then it's what do you do about it? And I think that is then the interesting bit of marrying the two together. I mean, what I would say is that as an artist, you've got to be free to express. And I think the good thing about this period now is that you can it's a bit of breathing space to experiment, to kind of find your creative voice of where you feel comfortable. What I would say is, and you know, some artists just want to create because they want to create, and they're not. It's never a commercial proposition. That's fine. That will just carry on. But for those that actually want to turn it into a career and make money out of it, there is that element of needing to flip this like commercial side of the brain on. And that's not about being mercenary. It's not about watering down what you do. You know, obviously we work a lot. In fact, we don't only, but we do quite a lot of work in fashion. It's the same thing. You know, I have designers that create these amazing collections. When even at the shop, I used to have designers come in with this collection. I'm like, okay, that's great, really nice collection, but who's it targeting? Who's the audience? What price is it? Why is it that price? You know, and like, I think one of the things we do, or I've always done, but we certainly at Slingshot would say, is ask good questions and you get good answers. And I think there's a few questions you can ask yourself that might help in that direction of creative flow. I think you do need to be in your own headspace as far as how you create, but then also flip that switch of looking out as well, because artists are very good at looking in. And I think that looking out and seeing the rest of the world outside of your muse and your inspiration can be hard. But I think if you can flip that switch to kind of open up a little bit, and though when you look out now, it's a little bit of a scary place with everything that's going on, but I think if you can open up a little bit and start to think about the potential target audience for what you're doing, you know, it's okay creating nice pictures, and actually something can be amazing, but if there's not a market for it and there's not an audience for it, it's just nice pictures. So it's kind of like, this is something we teach no matter what, whether it's a service or a product or it's art, whatever it is. It's think about who that end user is, who's the end consumer, who is that audience, and really, to be honest, the brands are needing to do that even more as well at the moment, because they need to analyse what they're doing and who they're doing it for, to be honest with you, because it's all been so flipped on its head. But it's really think about who it is that's going to consume your art, or who's going to be attracted to your art. Yeah. It's not really just about demographic. You know, we really talk a lot more about spirit rather than just demographic. So it's not necessarily about age. It's not necessarily, I mean, there's an element of income that's related depending on how the price points of your art, but it's much more about alignment of spirit and values. So, I mean, we can talk a bit more about values in a minute, but I think it's who are those people that will align with what you're doing and your values. And actually, when we talk a lot more on the whole positioning, and actually with any kind of brand, we don't sell, if we do PR, we don't sell the products. So in theory, we don't sell the art. We sell the brand, which is the person and the values and spirit. So if you think a bit more outside of that individual, because you know, as I say, you can become quite anal as an artist, and I can say this as being one as well, that you become very consumed by the individual piece and the, you know, the perfectionism of and all that, and it's actually,
to a degree, you know what I mean, with creativity, they're mostly obsessive type of personalities.
Yeah. So I think it's stepping out of that a little bit, which is really hard. It's easy to say and hard to do. But the more you can kind of step out of that, and I think if we talk a bit about the values and spirit stuff in a minute too, it's understanding that so that you can understand the types of people that will align with what you're doing. Yeah. And like I say, when we talk about target customers, it's very much more about like-mindedness. And for us, and this is not necessarily general for PR, because a lot of PR agencies are more conventional in the way that the methodology of how they work. But for us, we sell stories and we sell brands. And by the way, if they love your brand, they'll buy into your art. So try not to think as much about the individual pieces of art, whether you're a photographer, you're a painter, you're a sculptor, whatever. Think much more broadly as far as who you are, and whether it's you've set it up as a business or whether it's just you as an individual artist. What is it that you bring to the table that someone's going to buy into versus someone else? It's the bottom line, really. It's like, if someone's not buying your art, what else are they buying? Or where else are they looking to consume? And that's not necessarily, you know, and to be honest with you, if people are buying art, you're competing with every level of artist and gallery, especially because it's such a subjective, but, you know, it's not an essential item. You're not a key worker, as really I'm not either. So it's an additional thing that people are consuming. It's not an essential thing. So you really, really need to tap into their spirit. You really do, because that's what they're aligning with. Hi, Tommy.
Shan. We have another travel Instagram, so it's Shannon.
So it's really honing in what is. I mean, I know when I was chatting with one of your artists at one of the exhibitions recently, that's really what it boils down to. And I think it is hard to do as an artist. I think especially it's hard to do as a single business owner anyway, whether you're a designer maker, whether you're an artist, whether you're a freelance stylist, photographer, whatever it is hard to think about yourself as a brand. But the sooner you do, the easier it will become on social media to promote yourself, the easier it will be to identify your audience, the easier it will be to say yes and no to opportunities, because you'll know when you understand your values and your brand, you will understand what is aligned with you and what you do. And I think, especially as a smaller, not literally smaller, but earlier in your creative career, as far as maybe commercially, I mean, you could have obviously been an artist forever, but as far as taking it into commercial sort of stage, I think that the sooner you can identify why you, what is it that's people are, and also then, okay, so it might be, for example, you feel that, and if any artist on, welcome to say a little bit of what they think their USP is, and there's a unique sort of selling point or pull, and I'm happy to kind of talk about it. But it might be that you think that the spirituality that comes out through your art is a selling point. You might think that your technique is a selling point. You might think that your unique perspective is a selling point. Mm-hmm. That probably describes most art on some levels. But I think it's also sort of trying to think about what value you add to someone. Like, art is something that people buy because they feel it's going to add something to their life on whatever level. Whether it's when they look at it, it makes them feel happy, whether it conjures up a memory, whether it fills them with admiration when they look at the technique, whatever it is, people buy art in general because it makes them feel something. It's about feelings. And I think the more you can connect with the feelings that your work conjures up, the more you will be able to understand the potential audience and what they want, need, and the value they'll get from it. And that sort of starts to help you to understand how you can shape what you do into more of it. Because the process you have to go through is really no different than any brand. You know, really, if you don't need to go into it as much depth, you don't need to have as great an understanding of it, and you don't need to have a big team working on it. But thinking like a brand, first of all, like I said earlier, that does not mean watering down or commercializing what you do. It can still be very creative, very abstract, whatever. But thinking like a brand and then behaving like a brand will help you to be perceived as a brand. And that's not that people look at you as an artist and think, you know, they're buying into it like they're buying into Sainsbury's, All Saints, Prada, whatever. It's more that people have their own personal values and they're looking for other people or products or brands that align with their brand. And I would say even more so now, because I think people are generally self-evaluating and they are analysing actually where their priorities lie, what they feel is important in their life on all levels. And authenticity is even more key and that the no bullshit thing is even more important. And I think that it gives a really good opportunity when people are almost laid out a bit raw to kind of really get close to them, especially through social media at the moment being even more prevalent with how digital we happen to be. You have even more of an opportunity to align with them. Yeah. So I think it's there's a huge amount of opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean straight away there's a huge amount of money to be made, but this time is really important for working on the foundations, because you can really get to the bottom of the understanding of who and what you are, and you've got the time to be creating, so that by the time we're out of this, even if you decide not to be selling online at the moment, that you are so strong and ready, and you will be one of those people that will ride the storm, I think is kind of... That was a very long-winded answer.
I'm getting loads from this. I hope you don't mind, but we're taking all the gas you got, lady. We're taking it all. But then again, you always mention values, and I'm from a very values-based in my personality, from where I've worked before. But for people who've never thought about values, or maybe it's like such a big word, but they don't really understand, it's like honesty, togetherness, like those types of things. How would you help someone to define or find their values?
Well, I think the values are very much about how you act, rather than it's the who you are, not what you are. Yeah. You know, it's not about I am a photographer, I am this, I am that. It's not that. That's the what. And it's the how, and it's the feeling and emotion about it. So I think you first of all want to start by, this is a full-on mentoring session here for free, guys.
Pay attention.
This is the thing with live, there's so much being given away for free. It's amazing. It's great. It's first of all, it's kind of looking at what you give a shit about, really. It's what you care about, and it's also how you care about how you act. You know, I mean, for us as an agent, we went through a massive branding process on ourselves before we even launched Slingshot. You'd kind of hope so as a branding agency, but we did. We went through. I mean, the name Slingshot didn't come till right at the end. Like we spent a few months working on what we were. And it was largely about the spirit and values and personality and the way we work and how we speak. So even when we do customer profiles for clients and we do branding, it's not so much about where do they shop, how old are they, my name's, when people do the profile, their name's Betty, she goes there, she eats there, she does that. It's much more about how they speak, how they feel, and how they act. Hi, Mark. It's my boxing teacher. Very good boxing teacher if anyone needs. It's much more about how you act and how you feel, how you speak. It's the emotional side of your brand. So it's so first of all, think about what you care about. Think about how you speak, for us, some of our values are being dynamic, being inclusive as a brand, and being very innovative and creative. The way that we work when we do branding, it's about cornerstones of the Mark also. We've also been. I've been chatting with Mark about it on his business as well, because it's it impacts the way that we behave and how we work and how we align. Because how as a business do you, or as a creative, do you decide what are the right opportunities that come along? How do you decide what your website should look like? How do you decide what your logo should look like? How do you decide what colours are your branding? How do you decide any of that if you don't know what your values are and the foundations of who you are is? How do you make those decisions? And this is where you see on any level with a business or creative, I'm saying this because I'm talking the same way if you're an individual creative or if you're a big brand. How it's about consistency, and if it's all very well, and I think the problem for small creatives is, one, not having the time or the bandwidth or the knowledge of how to do some of these things.
Yeah.
But if you then become a bit more knee-jerk about how you behave, and you just decide, that's what I look like, that's what my branding, that's what I'm going to put out as, like, that's how I'm going to create a website. It's very obvious. Customers are more and more savvy now than ever, and they're also very used to seeing a lot higher level quality that's not necessarily expensive, because people are able to be much more polished in their approach. I think, people can create videos quite easily now. They couldn't before. People can create quite good photography even on their phones. People can create stuff that makes them look at a higher level than they possibly are.
Yeah.
So I think you need to understand how savvy customers are. Art consumers, or whatever it is, people that, if you're selling photography to whatever. So having that understanding of who you are and what makes you tick. We do these cornerstones because it's like the underpinning of your building, your foundations. Yeah. You can have more, you can have less, but it's kind of just having that kind of real underpinning to what you do. And also, it's like, if someone says to you, and I've seen this, artists, creatives, brands, they're sort of almost like the elevator pitch of who you are, what you are. And it's like, you can't just describe the art. That's not who you are. That's what you do. Like, people want to connect with the stories. When I've gone to any gallery, people, they look at a piece of art on face value and they decide whether it does anything for them. They decide whether it connects, whether it makes them happy, sad, emotion. But that's face value art. Yeah. But the storytelling of the art, and I had that chat with one of your artists. It's that storytelling of it. That's what people connect with, and that's the same for any product or service. Don't try and sell stuff to people. Like, understand who you are, but create that connection through how you tell the stories of it. More and more people want to. They want to know, and they want to know about the brand. They want to know about what you do. This is why you even get, this is slightly basic and maybe a random kind of comparison, but even how many years ago it was, even like Pret started doing this, obviously now not bloody McDonald's, but owned by, but even the imagery that they start putting on the walls of the storytelling almost of the veg and the freshness and that, it's small stuff, but it's the subconscious storytelling of who you are as a brand. Now, as an artist, we talked about maybe a lot of art or creativity comes from being in a challenging place. Tell stories of that. That's why people will connect with it. You don't necessarily tell them everything. Really, they don't need to know everything, but like the spirit of that story.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that emotional connection for me, I find, because sometimes artists are quite shy, so that's why we've started doing these artist conversations, because I feel like people also want a chance to, maybe at the gallery, they don't get to talk to the artist, or they don't get to understand the meaning behind it. So I'm super lucky that quite a few people have signed up and they're really excited to do these conversations, because I think, like you say, the story behind it can move you, and the art that you knew moved you before now has this emotional connection to the artists that you have built through seeing how they are, like you say, how they behave, how they speak, how they show themselves to the world is really, really important, I think, because it's really nice is such a revolting word, sorry. Okay. It's great. It's really great when you get to see an artist kind of get a little bit lost in what they're explaining, because they're so obsessive about it. And I find it's like,
really difficult, yeah.
But yeah, the emotional connection for me is so important. So that's why I'm glad quite a few artists I didn't think would do it are quite keen to share their perspective and their journey of what they're going through.
But I think it's also through the storytelling, people want to connect if there's any element of vulnerability. Now, it's not, you don't need to go into full stories, but are you coming to say hello? A child. Actually, Frieda's my mini artist. It's an element of vulnerability, because I think, like I'm just going to keep using that the artist I can see, and I don't know, she may be on, but you know, if people don't know the story, they're just connecting or not connecting purely on face value of whether they like or don't like the picture, or whether they rate it, or whether they think it's good quality, whether they think it's whatever. So I think there's been incidences of, like, then when you read the story, oh my God, like that, then you find out that was that. And, you know, like, we did a project a few years ago with this brand that made headpieces.
To give you a 10-minute, we have 10 minutes left, and Ketan's made a comment. He finds it very difficult, I think, the emotional connection side. But is that when you think, if they look more into their website and their branding, that they can help through that in order to build that emotional connection without necessarily putting themselves out there?
You just have to wait 10 minutes, Frida.
No, do you want to?
I don't know this second.
You do, because you hit it.
I don't,
Frida.
Honestly,
Where?
step away.
Where?
Frida, I am serious. Sorry about this.
One voice.
You can watch it.
You have to wait 10 minutes.
No, you don't. You're in a call.
You have a whole load of people here, actually, Frida, that you're talking to. Okay? That he, you now have to say hello because you've now created a stink. I think that it's connecting with your. It's difficult to tell the story. I think I would say is that you need to connect with the original source of how you were inspired to begin with. If you find it difficult connecting with, I'm really sorry about this. You need to go now.
Okay, I'll repeat that.
I mean, I tell you what, this homeschooling home children thing has got a lot to answer for. I think if you find it difficult I tell you what it is. I think it's because you put a lot of emotion into a piece of art.
Yeah.
And though there's a vulnerability that has created the art, I think then artists find it quite difficult to then expose that vulnerability afterwards.
Yeah.
Because it was the energy to help create it. And I think that it's another thing to then expose that.
Yeah.
But that's why I think as an artist, if you aren't willing to or don't feel comfortable about personally saying it, obviously it's great because you've got some people that have come on doing lives, which is brilliant. But if you don't feel that confident or comfortable telling your story, then I think almost get into a flow of even writing diaries whilst you're creating it, of like how you're feeling, and you're almost creating this story whilst you're creating. You know, because I think for a lot of people, and it's with most brands, they want to see the story of how it got to there. Like, what was your inspiration? Like, I always ask this with any brand, whether it's fashion, whether it's beauty, whatever it is, arts, music, what's the music inspiration? What was the inspiration? What was the journey in creating it? And how did it make you feel? Because how it makes me feel is impacted by you. I don't have loads and loads of art because we've not got masses of space here, and there's loads of bloody pictures of children on the walls and children's art. But the art or the pieces that I have bought of furniture or interiors have, for me, all have a story. That it's not even. I don't actually even look at them and think, do I think they're a good painting, or do I think it's a beautiful piece of furniture? It has a connection. Like, I bought a painting from the street in India by this guy, and it doesn't even look anything like he described at the time that it was about. And I don't even really know what it was like. It was a street view or whatever. It doesn't actually matter to me, because when I look at that, I'm taken back to that place of where I bought it and the storytelling and that person that created it. So I connect with him. And I like the piece of art. Would I like it if I saw it in a gallery and I didn't have the story? Maybe not. I don't know. And the same for me with odd pieces of furniture I've bought. Before the children, we used to travel quite a lot, and we bought quite a lot of stuff. I've got this mosaic mirrored cross from Mexico. We've got a table from Morocco. I've got a Ganesh, antique Ganesh from India. I've got all these different bits, and for me, it's not about the things, it's about the connection, and it's about the emotion. So the more you can express the emotion, put it down. If you find it difficult, just get in the habit of putting stuff down whilst you're curating. Or if it's easier, just do videos of yourself, of like what's inspiring you, or take video footage of the process. Do some time lapse, do some, the more you can do of the process, the more people will connect with the end results. More and more, even on social media, I think people are doing videos of the process of stuff. And that's what people, and then they see the end result. It's even you saying about Frida's hair. You saw the before bit or the middle bit, and you want to see the end. But you've been bought into the story.
What's quite funny is, and Ketan will maybe hate me for saying this, but he's a fantastic, amazing graphic designer. But he also has this way of, like, we'd have a cardboard cutter at work, but he'd upload a video where he's angled like his phone camera to take a really, like, a bizarre angle of this huge cutting machine. And then you're like, oh, well, and then later he'd like post a letter on a wall or something. So like, he's very good at that way.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that that's the advice you've given him, because he's quite fantastic at the process stuff. But yeah, it's nice because not everyone is very, hi, I'm sparkly and amazing, and I wanted to think about everything.
That process journey doesn't have to be you in it. Like, you don't even have to. Yeah, so if you struggle with being on camera or putting down the emotions that you have in writing, then just document the process. Like, find something that does resonate or that feels comfortable for you. I think it is good to push yourself. I mean, I have only started doing bloody videos on social, like, really, to be honest with you, when we went into lockdown. I've done presenting for like 20 years. I have everyone that knows me, I have no problem talking generally. And I don't really have a problem talking in big cameras to huge audiences. I present on stage. But I just felt like a bit of a knob doing it on these social media. And to be honest with you, after I'd done one or two, I just got over that. And I think... And now, I can't shut up, but but I think that you just find a voice that, if you find a voice that you feel adds some element of that, people have said, yes, this has helped, that's helped. If you feel like you're adding some element of value, even if it's just making someone laugh, or it's giving someone insight or whatever, then it's worth it. And it may well be, I think it's not just to stay in your comfort zone, but I think to start it off, then doing the documenting the product, even brands that we work with, people want to see how it's made. If they buy a bag, they want to know how it's made. Like, they don't want to just think that it magically appeared from a factory. And actually, what will come out more and more from this is that people want even more backstory. Like, they want to know, who made your clothes, who made your it's all of that.
I must say the Uptown Yardie, the hat designer and shoe designer you guys work with, I love his Instagrams where he shows a part of the leather of the shoe, and then the next part is a bit the whole, and you can see that handmade thread go throughout all of his stuff, which is very, very
a combination of the authenticity that's there, but also because I'm just saying about food, but you've already bought into the story. Like, you're hooked into an element of the story. So when you get to the final product, even if, for example, if that was your price point and you were going to buy a pair of shoes, that versus whatever, wouldn't you rather have a pair of shoes that you know the story of than another pair that are actually really similar quality, but that one's got that's why I really only wear vintage and pre-loved, and that's, for me, part of it is I like the storytelling of my outfit. Almost like this is a whole load of bits from Mexico. They're all from the Silver City and Taxco in Mexico. Everything. This was from Greece. Everything's got, for me, is a story, and that is like it's the beauty and part of the USP of stuff. So I think if you're struggling to understand what your USP is, first of all, start documenting the process of what you do. if you can write down some of the mindset and things that drive you and understand a bit of what your values are, you might then have a different approach to it. And it also might be, if you have a few different styles of what you do, you might think, oh my God, actually, once you put your values down, like, yeah, that for some reason didn't quite work and I didn't know why. Now I understand, because it doesn't actually touch my values properly. Yeah. You know, and it's the same with anything. It's, you know, even again, like with clothing, like colours, like colour. I teach in colour therapy a bit as well, and colour, and it's that whole thing of like, sometimes you just don't know why something's wrong. And then when you understand, like, if maybe it's a colour doesn't see, it just makes you feel a weird way. And then until you quite get it, it's like, that's why. Or, you know, you don't always know why something jars, but once you get it, then it's like, shit, actually that all makes sense. So I think there is method to some of this madness, but it's like, it's a bit of a process. But that's why I said in the very beginning, it's all about mindset. It's changing your mindset to think outside the box and think outside of the individual piece of art you're creating and go like that, and see yours and visualize yourself in the world, in a gallery, in a whatever. The visualization of that helps you to step outside of you in a studio and the detail of, is that line right? Is that colour perfect? Is that whatever? And actually, once you then see it there, it's like, oh shit, that doesn't even matter. Like, it doesn't even matter, because if the style and everything else is true to who I am and it fits within my brand, who fucking gives a shit if that little bit of line wasn't right? No one's ever going to notice that. And the issues become, the small things become less important, and you focus a bit more on the bigger picture, which I think is hard as a creative, but it's something that's really beneficial to the progress of your sort of personal brand.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say, well, we have a couple minutes left. You've been absolutely amazing. If there's any questions, anyone desperately, 29 seconds left. Anyway, Zoe, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
We're going to do some workshops to help creatives and artists and stuff. So we'll let you know. We'll let you know all the details to help everyone with branding and social media and stuff.
Perfect. Zoe's also in our Instagram stories. You can go into Slingshot and have a look at all the wonderful brands these ladies work with. And have a great day.
Thank you. Sorry for the child disruptions.